I've played a ton of survival crafting games.
Yeah, you have.
So many. You too. I know you've played your fair share.
It's so hit or miss for me, though.
Yeah, and me too. It takes you to a fun theme park where mascots try to kill you, so that's...
Great. Mascot horror. There are about 700 different backrooms games. Several of them are co-op.
Oh, fun.
So, with things that we'd like to try, perhaps if you'd like, we could try to do one of those.
I literally am telling you, there's like 5 moments in this entire game, maybe more, where you're like, okay, what is happening now? And they just run up to you, and they just start slashing you for like a third of your entire health bar if they get to you.
That.
So, Alex, this last year, 2024, had some pretty good games that came out.
It had quite a few bangers this last year, I suppose.
Had some bangers. I'm gonna be doing a list over on Titanium Mind of my best to worst relatively soon.
Best is Helldivers 2.
It's toward the top. Toward the top. So is Pal World, surprisingly enough. Even though I'm like, I hung my head in shame that I had to put it toward the top. It's like, am I really gonna put this game? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you played a lot of it, especially after you put mods in.
I did. I did. Yeah, the mods were fun. There's a lot of interesting games that came out. One thing I realized just on that topic is a lot of years I'll have really high highs for games, like really great ones, and then there's going to be really terrible ones that came out during that year. This one was a lot closer. There were games that I really did like. Maybe not as much as some of the ones in the past, but there were games that I really did like. And even the ones that were toward the bottom of my list were like, they weren't terrible. The thing is that there were actually 5 games that I played in 2024 that did not release in the year. They were older games. And I actually 5 that I actually wanted to talk about to some degree. And so we're going to do that here. And I'm going to try to do them in the order that I played them chronologically to the best of my remembering of how I did this. So let's start with a game that I actually have talked about on the show before, which is GreenHell.
Yes, that didn't come out last year?
No, it's been out. It was many years ago. Many moons. I'm probably going to put something on screen now, but I believe it was like 2017, 2018, something like that. It's a while back. But yeah, I played GreenHell, and when I was talking about it on the show, it was in reference to the fact that the paranoia that it makes you feel about everything trying to kill you really works great for like a horror survival kind of setting. It like makes you hyper aware, something that might come up a little later in this episode as well. But the hyper-awareness of, like, everything coming to destroy you was something that I really had not seen in a lot of, like, survival crafting games beforehand. And it really surprised me. Now, that's not to say that when I first started, I wasn't, like, ready to ditch it. This was one I actually had to power through for the first, like, hour or two.
Yeah, see, I have this thing where if I have to power through the first 2 hours of a game, like, if I'm 90 minutes in and I haven't been enjoying it, I'm like, I'm just gonna kind of refund this, because you need to grab my attention in the first, like, 2 hours of gameplay. Sometimes you need to grab my attention in the first 20 minutes of gameplay.
There are games I will play for, 20 or 30 minutes, and I will realize that I can't see the value of them to continue going. Those are the ones I'll refund. GreenHell, on the other hand, was a game that I was like, there's something here. I'm just not quite clicking with it yet. And it's those kinds of games that are really interesting to experience. After, like, dying several times, I was like, okay, what am I missing here? When I started interacting with the systems and realizing that there's stuff in that game that really expands beyond even what they tell you. One of the first things was coconuts. Because, like, there are coconuts around the island. And I was like, oh, okay, so I guess I eat the coconut. And they're like, well, yeah, but what you do is you actually can process a green coconut. You get, like, a coconut halves, and you can split that in two. And now you have you can get coconut meat out of it, and you can get water, but you also get coconut bowls. And I'm like, oh, that's fun. What am I going to do with the coconut bowls? And it turns out, well, actually, what you can do with the coconut bowls is you can use them to create soups. Oh, well, so now I had all these bones, like animal bones or, fish bones. You can make them into soups, and those are more filling. But also, I can, if I just put the coconut bowls on the ground, and it rains, they fill with water, fresh water. And I can drink that. So now it's like, oh, okay. So I have, like, multiple uses for this that aren't necessarily, made clear to me at the beginning, but I messed around with stuff. Then I started messing around with stuff. And that's when I was like, oh, okay, I kind of get, like, these different things that I can do in the game that, work in different ways. Like, if I find something and I don't know what it's for, I might actually be able to use it for something down the line. And then when you get to the DLC part of it, they add in new mechanics for other things that can try to kill you. and that even makes you start to wonder about, like, collecting building resources and stuff like that, and if you're going to be safe doing that. And throughout that whole thing, they give you enough of the storyline to propel you forward to want to go outside of your camp. Because I did find that, like, at the beginning of the game, I kind of wanted to stay on my one little space to try and, deal with not dying. Keeping from getting cold or sick or losing nutrients and stuff like that. I wanted to stay on my one little space. But there's a big map, right? So they propel you through with a storyline, and the storyline itself is also really interesting as you start to realize kind of the selective memory of your character. I guess what I'll say. the very selective memory of your character, and the memories that he uncovers throughout the whole thing as he's going through to figure out why this place is not the way he remembers it from the last time that he came, which I think resolves really well as well. I've played a ton of survival crafting games.
Yeah, you have.
So many. You too. I know you've played your fair share.
It's so hit or miss for me, though.
Yeah, like, me too. I understand.
Like, there's a bunch of them that I want to like, and the idea of them is something that I think is okay, but the execution of it is just not my favorite.
And the thing about it is that sometimes I'll play a survival crafting game specifically because it's like, I kind of already know what the formula is going to be. Like, I already know, oh, okay, I'm going to chop down wood so I can build a workbench. And then I'm going to use the workbench in order to build, like, some basic gear. Then I'm going to use the basic gear so that I can build a fire. And then I can hunt for stuff so I can put it on the fire. Like, I practically know what's going to happen for the first, like, 3 or 4 hours of a survival crafting game. And so when I started playing GreenHell, it has those elements at the beginning. You're by a river, and there's fish in the river, and there's trees that you can chop down and stuff that you can do. But as it started to be like, oh yeah, and also you can get food poisoning and worms, and if you're exhausted and you pass out from exhaustion and you're in the mud, you're gonna get, like, stuff under your skin. And you gotta dig those out, and you gotta figure out how you're gonna patch that up. And it's like, okay, these are, like, mechanics I never see in other games. And it makes me really conscientious about everything I'm doing in a way that I don't usually get from these kinds of games. To be really mindful of so many different things. To make it feel like I was actually trying to survive in this world in a way that I don't typically experience in other games.
There's a VR version of GreenHell?
Oof. Man, that's gotta be something. I shudder at playing VR, honestly. I don't know how I feel about VR.
Well, especially when you've got to dig maggots out of your skin.
It wasn't maggots. It was worms. I think it was like some kind of worm. But what you then had to use is if you had infected tissue, you had to like find maggots so you could put them on the infected tissue, so that you could get rid of the infected tissue, and then you had to find the plants that were like antiseptic and create bandages with the antiseptic so that you could get rid of it. There's a process, folks, and if you leave it alone, you're gonna die. But GreenHell is just one of those games that takes a very hyper approach to a genre that doesn't typically do that, and ends up creating a really unique experience that I just did not experience in other survival crafting games, despite how many that I've played. So, again, that was one of the 5 that I actually wanted to talk about from 2024. The second one that I wanted to discuss is one I haven't talked about on the show, but I'm pretty sure you're aware of it, and it's TheSurge.
I played a bit of TheSurge 2, I think, on your recommendations.
Yes, I believe so.
I was like, alright, this is interesting, but like,
Well,
I'm
not
a fan of the Souls.
Yeah,
formulas.
if you're not down with the Souls genre, you're not gonna like TheSurge. But here's the thing that was really interesting about this game. Maybe the reason I wanted to talk about it. I played TheSurge. We're talking about Surge 1. I played TheSurge when it first came out so many years ago. I think it was 2017.
Same
and
with GreenHell, apparently.
Apparently, yeah.
It's retro 2017ing.
I know. I'm going that far back for so many of these. The other ones are more recent. I played TheSurge when it first came out, and I went through the first level, and the second level felt very claustrophobic and dark, and I kept dying, and I stopped playing TheSurge. I was not interested in playing TheSurge anymore, and I was definitely not through most of the game. So when I played TheSurge 2, because I did hear that it was very good, I played TheSurge 2, and I got further in Surge 2 when it first came out, and then I got to that garden with the giant mechs that like have a hitbox that's the entire field, and I got tired of that because I kept dying there, and I pieced out on that game. Cut to this year, and going back to Surge 2. And I played through Surge 2 to the end, and I started a new game and everything like that, and I was like, oh, when you really sit down with it, and you get past some of the annoying bits, and you figure out how to traverse those, this got some really interesting systems for a Souls-like, especially like the limb mechanic, where you can target certain places, and it has armor, and you can get pieces for scrap for that armor so that you can build new pieces of armor for yourself. You can actually... It felt a little bit almost like Mega Man. You know how in Mega Man where you'd beat the bosses and then you get their weapon? You can use their weapon that they had. It's a little bit like that. Yeah, I see these cool pieces of armor on the enemies, and I go, ooh, let me see if I can smack that off there, cut off the limb that has that armor, and I'm going to collect the schematics for that, and then I'm going to be able to get components that I can use to build it. And so after doing that, I was like, oh, okay, so there's a lot of different weapon types, and a lot of different movesets, and you can... build out, like essentially your chipset, so that you can really, utilize the system well, like continually generate energy and then use energy moves to get health so that I can go really fast and everything. So I thought, well, going back to Surge 2 worked out really well. What about if I go back to Surge, the original one? And so I did. This time I actually finished the Surge. Went through to the end, because what I realized is actually the Surge is pretty much just the Surge 2 with a few features removed. One of them is really just that it's not as much of an open world as Surge 2. It's much more of a, you have this kind of level, and then you get on a tram, you go to the next piece.
It's more linear.
It is. If the Surge 2 is more like Elden Ring, then this is more like Dark Souls in terms of level design. Not that Surge 2 really was open in the way Elden Ring was, but it's definitely more so in that way. So the Surge is a little bit more boxed in. It doesn't have as many things to it as, Surge 2 had. It does have a lot of really interesting, boss battles and environments when you get past the dark shipping container area that's just kind of boring. And it loops back on itself. And I played the DLC as well. And it takes you to a fun theme park where mascots try to kill you, so that's...
Great. Mascot horror.
Yeah, exactly. You just get big guys in suits that are actually animatronics, and they try to kill you with laser beams, so that's fun. And also there's a challenge section of the game. It's the good and the bad and the ugly reference, but it's a Wild West kind of themed thing where you go through several challenge rooms and you unlock new special equipment by doing so. Works perfectly fine. And started New Game Plus on that. Very fun to be able to go back to the beginning and it's like, oh, I got my weaponry now, and there's new things to collect, and harder enemies, and all of that. So that was one of those games that was a second chance, really, for me.
Oh, yeah. And you've been meaning to watch those, so...
And I've done a few of them over on Titanium Mine. This was going to be one that I talked about, but I was like, I don't really know if I'm going to do an actual Titanium Mine on it. But it's definitely one that I wanted to discuss somewhere. The Surge is a good game on second playthrough, in the same way that Surge 2 was a good game on second playthrough, but I almost had to complete the second one to say, hey, I'm wondering what actually did happen in the first game now. And it's interesting when you do part 2 and then you go back to part 1. Because it's like, okay, so I know what happens in the story of part 2. How did part 1 actually relate to that? And it does.
That reminds me of, what is it, Tragic Heroes?
Oh, okay.
Kind of like that trope where it's, for instance, reading my Warhammer novels that I definitely don't have the complete set of. At that point, knowing Warhammer 40k and reading the Horus Heresy novels, it's like, I know the outcome of this event in their lore history.
Sure.
Like, I know what's going to happen. I know the outcome of this thing that happened 10,000 years ago.
Sure.
But, like, I don't know the process in which it happened. Right. So those books to me are like, oh, cool, this character, I know this character. They're alive in 10,000 years, but they are this way. Very different from who they are now. What causes that to happen? It's very similar to that. I enjoy... especially if you have, like, again, the Warhammer 40k stuff, and then later you create the Warhammer 30k stuff, and you go, hey, know these beloved characters you've got? We've got the reason for their existence.
Yes.
Back here. We have retroactively made their lore, and made it better than it could have been, just creating it at that point. Right.
And so, like, the characters and the events of the original Surge do really fall into what happens in Surge 2, and so it's good to get a little bit of backstory on it. Not that the story is, like, really rich, but it does definitely help, I think, with the world building that it's trying to accomplish in this, very technological world with all the implants and the upgrades and everything, and then that goes feral, essentially, and things start to break down, and it's a power struggle, because of course it's a power struggle between, like, people that want to seize power over the entire grid, and in a lot of ways, like, the story and the overall impetus, it's weird to say, but it actually reminds me a lot of, like, Lies of P, because Lies of P is also a game that's a Souls-like, where they take a very simple concept of the automatons, but in Lies of P, it's the puppets, and they go rogue, and they start killing people, and then you have to figure out who's trying to do all of that, and who are the architects, and can you save them, and, make moral choices on that line. It's like that, but instead of, like, the, like, fantastical Victorian setting of Lies of P, TheSurge does it in like a post like sci-fi kind of setting, like, you know, a dystopic sci-fi kind of thing. But very good. Just one of those games that I had to play a second time to really get. It's one of those. But I'm glad that I did. So
sometimes you just need to go back to a game years later.
Yeah.
To actually appreciate it.
I have laundry lists probably of games that I will come across. One of them that's on my list to play hopefully pretty soon is The Long Dark, which again is a game that came out around the same time as those other games. Was like a survival game. I think when I first played that one, it was I like ended up in a car, and I was freezing, and there were wolves right outside the car door, and this was fairly early on in the game. I had not played very long. And I'm like, I need to, like, I'm getting cold, and I tried to, like, light a torch, and I'm in the car, and then the car, like, blew up. It either blew up, or I had to get out of the car, and the wolves immediately killed me, because I and so I was like, I'm gonna have to come back to you later, many years down the line. And so I think now that I played, like, GreenHell, The Long Dark is a little bit like that. I'm like, I wonder how close to it is, you know. I had to have reference. Okay, the next one I don't have to talk about very long, I don't think, because people have watched me play the entirety of the game. It's the Exit 8.
Oh, yeah.
But
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about that a little.
Yeah, we did talk about it, and we talked about the idea of, you know, this in many ways, I said that I'd be bringing this back, foreshadowing, with GreenHell having to be hyper-aware of things. The entirety of the Exit 8 is about hyper-awareness. It needs to make you hyper-aware of these things, and it does a very good job of it. The thing I think I was talking about was that as a mechanic, like a standalone mechanic, which is very interesting, and has spawned a whole genre now, so...
I was going to say, well, good news, it has, because there's been Station 8, I think, maybe, the train one. There's
Platform 8, I have that, have not played it. Not played
and
it.
you also have the Cabin Factory.
Which I am terrified to play, because that
is the exact same formula.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And 10 Bells that everyone talks about, which is about the English pub. Is also a Spot the Difference one. Yeah.
I've seen that one played as well.
Yeah. And so this whole Spot the Anomaly genre is really fascinating, and the Exit 8 is really my only reference point. The thing I think is really interesting about it is that it's not explicitly a horror game. Like,
not explicitly. It's creepy.
It's not. It is definitely creepy. And there was the thing. I'm a bad uncle. When my nieces were over, and the one was like, I want to play a scary game. Give me a really scary game. I always try to find really silly things for them to play that I'm like, oh, maybe it's a little spooky. I was like, okay, fine. The next time you come over, because I was like, I have some actual horror games that I don't really want her to play. Because she thinks that she's going to like them, but she's not going to like them. But I'm like, I might be able to give her Exit 8. Because Exit 8, you can't die. There's no death or anything in it. Nothing comes out and you know, tries to you know, chase you or anything. But there's a lot of things going on that are unnerving enough that you would say, oh, something is wrong here. So if that happens, I guess I'll report back. If
you haven't done that yet, okay.
I loaded up and I was ready. She was ready for this, but then they called us for dessert and then they had to go. So but I was like, okay, next time you come, we'll do the Exit 8.
We always do the duck game, plastic duck.
I do want to. It is a horror game.
Did you not look at games tags?
No.
It's psychological horror.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
I thought that the plastic ducks were just that there's just ducks and you play with the ducks. No?
Now it's a psychological horror game.
Oh, fun. I'll have to try that at some point. I have not played it.
Oh, I shouldn't have told you, and I should have told you to just play it on stream without telling you then.
Placid Plastic Ducks, or whatever it's called. Yeah, it's fun. But yeah, now Exit 8 is, this game that really spawns the whole genre of the spot the anomaly thing. And the great thing about it as a genre that works for horror, which more explicit examples have given now, is that you're already in a mindset that you have to be hyper aware of everything around you. You have to be mindful of every little detail. And so you can add subtlety into that, and it's going to have to get noticed. The subtle differences have to get noticed for you to beat the game. So you can build small worlds, like in Exit 8, that have a handful of elements, but that you have to all be mindful of. Like, the tiles are scratched up on the ground. Or, the posters aren't right, that are on the side. And you're like, well, I gotta be aware of that. The sign has the wrong words. But if you aren't looking up at the sign, you're never going to catch it, and you're never going to get to the exit. That's kind of like the whole thing. And then the more explicit ones that are very fun, that are like the river coming at you, or the water coming. Or the two guys that are just standing at the end of the hall. Those are always fun too. But yeah, even to the point where at the end of that game, if you watch that stream, I'm looking at the staircase that leads out of the subway tunnel, and I'm sitting there kind of like going, wait, is that supposed to also be an anomaly? And so I hesitate to go up the stairs, because it's like, wait, what if that's a trick too? Because there's not supposed to be a stairway around here.
Yeah, because the game has conditioned you to be like, wait a second.
It is a unique experience. It's not a very long experience, but it is definitely something that I had not experienced in games before. Yeah. Not that I necessarily want to try a ton of other examples of the genre.
There are about 700 different Backrooms games. Several of them are co-op.
Oh, fun.
So, with things that we'd like to try, perhaps if you'd like, we could try to do one of those. I don't know how spooky they are. They're liminal for sure, and some have monsters, but maybe?
Yeah, maybe. I have a handful of ones that are kind of backroom adjacent. I think you got me Anemiapolis for Christmas, which I've been looking forward to.
Yeah, that one, I saw it on your wish list. It's like, I've seen this entire game. Like, the first part played, and like, this will be fun. That
one is the kind of thing that looks just really interesting for me. Mm-hmm. That just looks very interesting. But like Cabin Factory, Crave got me Cabin Factory, and I'm like, I hesitate to even click on downloading that one, because I'm like, I know where this one's going. I know, and I'm not excited about it. Mm-hmm. I'm just not excited. But I did buy Platform 8 to play at some point. Because I'm wondering what they did with the formula from Exit 8, with that team. But yeah, no, Exit 8, definitely one worth trying. And if you've seen any of these games that are like the Spot the Anomaly thing, the Exit 8, as far as I know, is really where that starts. I have not seen it. As
far as I know, too.
Yeah, there might have been some other smaller examples, but that's really the first big one that really, hit to any degree that I've heard of. So, Exit 8, really, really well done. But very simple concept, very simple mechanics. Just either you move forward if there aren't any anomalies, you go back if you see any. Very, very straightforward. Literally just walking in order to do the hallway. Just a hallway. You make one decision or another decision. It's a binary decision that you have to make, but with a lot of data that you have to collect to figure out which one of those you're going to do.
Actually, side note too, there is another one I think on my wish list called like the Anomaly Project.
Oh, really?
It's like $7, something like that. It's pretty cheap, pretty inexpensive rather. But it is a co-op one where you have to spot anomalies.
Oh, fun.
It's not as realistic looking graphics, not as Unreal Engine, but it was when I was like, this looks interesting. Maybe we could play that together sometime.
Oh, okay. That would be interesting. Maybe we'll do that.
See.
The next one that I have on my list is actually another one I can't talk about very long, and you're gonna know the reason why. It's Inscryption. It's Inscryption. And the reason, and I've talked about this, I think, on one of our Patreon pieces, is it's annoying I can't talk about Inscryption. Because Inscryption is so good and so well done and has so much going for it, but talking about it at any length is almost guaranteed to give away every cool thing that it does. For anybody that's listening, if you have not played Inscryption, just go play it. And if you think you know what the game is going to be, if you've seen screenshots of like the card game that happens at the beginning and, oh, this looks kind of creepy, there's so much beyond that is hard to even explain. And the way I think of it like this is that I've played games with twists. And some of them are great. KOTOR has one very well-known twist in the middle of it, about 2/3 of the way through. BioShock has one or two, maybe, in the entire thing. One toward the very beginning, and then one toward the end with Would You Kindly. And these are great games, and they have like this one little twist somewhere that it really, really changes things on its head.
It's kind of like Spec Ops: The Line, as everyone says. Oh yeah, when you get the perspective from the end of the game about the whole game, it suddenly puts it all into perspective, and there's a twist.
Right. And to be fair, there's really, there's 2 or 3 times in Spec Ops: The Line that reframes the game very heavily, where you're like, whoa, okay, so this is not the game I thought I was playing. You know, it's those kinds of things. The reframing, I think, is really interesting. And I've played a lot of games, and some of my favorite games of all time are the ones that at least take the one opportunity to reframe what you're doing and change it all on its head, as long as it's in line with the story that they're telling. Inscryption does it about 5 times. And I'm not exaggerating that number. I literally am telling you, there's like 5 moments in this entire game, maybe more, where you're like, okay, what is happening now? What are we doing? I assume
there's more, because there's stuff that exists for Inscryption outside of the game itself.
Right. And so I can't even begin to think of that part. But there are multiple ways that this goes that completely reframes how you think about the game world, the characters that are inside of it, and what it's trying to do. And there are some genuinely unnerving moments in the game, even though it's really not supposed to be unnerving. It's not there to like purposefully scare you. It's just it built a world, and when you interact with that world that they built, that makes sense, you get creeped out by the world that you are in, and it's very effective. At the same time, though, those core mechanics of the card deck building and playing the cards and all of that remains throughout the entire game. Like, the core concept of the game is just reiterated and reimagined over and over again throughout the game, which is very cool because they don't abandon that basic concept. Even though the
it's
concept
so easy to just start the game as a card game and then abandon the card game for something else entirely. Yeah. Like, oh yeah, we pulled the rug away and now there's no more card game. It's just like this. We started Witcher 3 by playing Gwent, and then we never talk about Gwent ever again. It's that. Inscryption is not like that. The basic mechanics, the core mechanic of the game is the card deck building aspect. Build your deck, learn the mechanics, beat your opponent. But the fact that they reframe the game world around it so effectively as many times as they do is really something. It's really something, and definitely worth note.
wish I could talk about it in any detail, but basically, I guess the one thing I'll just say, regardless of whether you played it or not, is take some time to play Inscryption.
I should say, I guess on that note, let us know down in the comments if you think I need to play and finish Inscryption so we can have a full episode devoted to talking about it with spoilers from the get-go, so the entire episode can just be, hey, don't watch this if you want to savor anything about Inscryption.
Yeah, because that would be a full spoiler-thon for Inscryption. You want that episode, you let us know.
It's on my wish list. I probably should have bought it when it was half off during Christmas sale, but I was like, I'll get around to it. So
it's not expensive anyway, but
it's not.
I don't know how you're going to like it, only because I know that deck building is not a huge thing for you as a mechanic.
It can be hit or miss. I want to like them a lot of times, and just sometimes they're just, I don't know. It's like, I don't want to play Darkest Dungeon because I don't like how I perceive it.
I couldn't do Darkest Dungeon either. I think the nice thing about Inscryption, though, is it starts you out with a very simple concept of how you're building your deck, and then through both the narrative qualities and you unlocking things, you keep getting stuff that adds into that. So it kind of has a good progression of getting those things. So but Inscryption.
So let us know in the comments, or if you're on Patreon, just let me know in general, or Discord. Be like, hey, play this fucking game. I want to hear you fucking nerds talk about this game.
Because it is that kind of a game. It really is.
Peer pressure me into doing it. I don't give into peer pressure, but if enough of you say play Inscryption aside from Nathan, I'll probably actually do it.
Yeah. And I think the other reason you like that is because of, like, the almost ARG nature.
I know, it has an actual ARG.
Oh, I'm sure, but, like, even in the game, like, while you're playing the game, you can feel that, Yeah. So it's good. But yeah, no, Inscryption. Definitely one I wanted to talk about, even though it technically came out in 23, I want to say, 22 or 23. So what we got to do is we got to get the person who made Inscryption to come and talk to us. And be like, the first thing we gotta do is be like, so what the fuck? Yeah. How I think that's the thing. How with Inscryption, I still to this day I'm like, how did you do that? I'm still trying to figure that out. But anyway, last game I have not talked about on the show, and the most recent one that I've played, but it's definitely one that I wanted to discuss. And it's BloodWest. BloodWest actually technically came out in 23. I think it did get a DLC. I have not played in 24. Little backstory about why I played BloodWest, though.
Sure.
I had picked it up. I saw it, and my thought was, oh, it's like almost like a boomer shooter. That's what I was thinking. It's a boomer shooter. It's set in the Old West, and there's like demons that you fight. This looks cool. It had really good positive reviews and everything like that. And I picked it up when it was on sale, thinking, okay, cool. I'll try it at some point. I was in a kick where I was trying to play more complex games. I eventually got to like Kenshi. And I was working through the systems of that for like a couple hours to like figure out how you do things in the individual. And I guess I had brain fry from that and a couple games before that also needed more headspace about, like, those aspects. And so I said, I need something that's simpler. I need something that's simpler to wrap my head around. And I was like, oh, BloodWest. I shoot demons. Great. Let me put everything else down. I'm gonna go shoot demons. What I did not expect from BloodWest is that it is not just, I shoot demons in a boomer shooter. It is like, the best way I can describe it is, it's Metro Exodus in the Wild West. Okay. Which you're not going to have a great frame of reference on, but...
I haven't played Metro.
Okay. The first couple Metro games, complete segue here, folks. The first couple Metro games are very straightforward shooting kind of games, where it's like a level-by-level progression. And what they did in Metro Exodus, a game that I did do a Second Chances video on over on Titanium Mine, by the way, is they did large open area settings, maps, where you would explore this area. And then the train, after you can fix up your train, you then get to move on to the next big set piece, and you get to spend lots of time in this map that encourages you to actually explore it and uncover what's going on in it. BloodWest is that. It starts off by giving you some very basic mechanics. Hey, sneak up on this, like, zombie miner, or this undead miner, and smack him in the back of the head with this hatchet that we gave you. And you smack them, and they fall down, and you're like, cool. They get you a revolver, and you're like, oh, I can shoot the demon in the head. And then, you know, the demon falls down, and I have stealth mechanics, and I can try to avoid people, and I get all the basics in. But then you wind up in the canyons, which is the first big set piece, and you realize there's all of this stuff. There's a town, there's an old abandoned church, there's these mines, there's, these tunnels that are underneath, there's a whole abandoned fort, and there's lots of these areas, and they all kind of, like, work themselves into each other, and you can explore all of that. And you can uncover secrets in all of that, and you can find special weaponry, and there's a leveling system so that you can get special skills involved. The core mechanic is still basically shooting or smacking, demons, but there's more to it than that, where you get to actually do a little bit of role-playing, a little bit of character development, and open world exploration and design. And also kind of encourages you to be conscientious about what you're doing, because things hit you for lots of damage very quickly, so it encourages you to really think about how you're going to address a situation. If you were kind of the mindset of, oh, sure, this is that game where, like, if it was Doom or Wolfenstein, I go in with the guns and I have to, like, go in guns a-blazing. If you go guns in blazing in BloodWest, you're gonna die pretty quick. It ain't gonna happen because the guns that you have are like you have like a long rifles, you have 6-shooters, pistols, revolvers, that kind of thing, and you have like double barrel shotguns. So you can only fire so fast with most of these weapons, and you have to reload, and reloading can take a while, even with upgrades. So you can't just blaze into town that has, like the demon sisters with the shotguns and the bird demons that have like real good accuracy with their revolvers, and think you're gonna come out of it. And especially, I can't remember what they're called, but they're these big, like, hulking monsters that look like mini Hulks almost, but without skin. And they just run up to you, and they just start slashing you for, like, a third of your entire health bar if they get to you. And you have stamina, and if you run out of stamina, you're not really outrunning them. So you gotta be mindful of trying to take them out, not alerting other enemies, and taking advantage of the terrain, and realizing what their attacks are, and how you can work your way around these enemies to utilize the battlefield to the best of your ability. It's not nearly as straightforward as just go up, shoot the enemies, move on to the next area. And it takes a while. You can spend probably 10 hours or so just in the canyons part alone, and there's 3 chapters. So you go to the swamps, and then you go to the mountains, and you can spend that much time in these areas, and you get some pretty hulking wendigos and these giant, like, demon bear creatures that you eventually have to... And you have to really start thinking about, like, okay, not only do I need the right kind of weaponry for this, I need the right kind of ammunition that's going to be the most effective for them. And am I going to be able to save up for that? And can I buy that someplace? Not a perfect game. Definitely some supply issues with, like, being, like, why can't I just buy more bullets for my gun so I don't run out of them? Because I have to buy them anyway, and I have the money for it. And there's definitely some storage issues, even when you buy backpacks and stuff. But what it does is really give you, like, that kind of open world shooter where you get to really explore the world that they built, and encourages you to do so. Like, I started playing a separate game where I did one mod where it just unlocks all of the equipment at the beginning. You still have to buy it, but, like, even the cut stuff that wasn't normally in the game, you can just buy it from the shops in the first part of the game to see what they had available. And I found areas I did not know about the first time I went through the canyons, to areas that I had not explored. And I'm like, oh, that's fun. There are whole artifacts I didn't uncover the first time through. That's neat. You know, it just encourages you to work your way through these areas and uncover stuff about the game world, much more than just like a simple shooter. But still gave me what I wanted, which was not as heavy a gaming experience of trying to uncover 50 different systems. Because, again, similar to Inscryption, the core mechanic is still first-person shooter, essentially. Except that when you roll into town and there's a bunch of, undead demon creatures that have guns or claws, you can't just do the thing where you're, like, rolling up on them, taking them all out. Nope, you're gonna die, you're gonna go back to the start. It even has a system in it that's a little Soulsy. You know, in a Souls game where enemies respawn when you die. You go back to your bonfire, and then all the enemies respawn. In this one, you don't lose your equipment. So you go back to a hub, and you can sell the stuff off that you accrued. You do start getting, like, wounds and curses that lower your stats as you die, and you have to try and get rid of those. Okay. But the one thing that it does do is some of the enemies can respawn. Not all of them, but some of them can respawn. So it does this interesting thing where you can go through an area, you can eliminate everybody in that area, and if you die, or you rest, some of them are there, and some of them aren't, which does put you in the mindset of, like, actually, I don't know how to get through this area, because I don't know which enemies are back, you know? In a Souls game, everything comes back, so I know, okay, gotta hit you, you, and in the new one, it's, you know, if you come across an area where you knew that there was, like, 6 cultists, and they were in this one area, and you took them all out before, well, now, you might expect there could be 6 cultists there now, but it's more likely that there's 3, and then you're like, but is there 3? Maybe there's 3 others and I just don't know where they are right now. Like, they're hiding on me. Very interesting mechanics, but it was definitely the kind of game I needed at that moment. Yeah. I don't know if you've ever played any of, like, open world shooting games like that are like first-person games, but they have open maps.
Played a bit of the Division 2, if that counts.
Okay, that's like a third-person version of it, and it's got like an open world terrain.
I've been kind of looking for, like, a shooter that is kind of open world, kind of customizable.
Yep.
Because, like, I'm not a COD player or anything like that. I don't want to play games like that. I want it to be something I can play, like, solo as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Because I'm not a big multiplayer gamer. But, like, Division 2 was fine for a while, but I kind of got bored of that. Because, like, the world isn't really interesting to me. The story isn't interesting to me. And that's hard to sell me on for a lot of games. But, like, I want some kind of shooter. And I was thinking about maybe even picking up Halo Infinite. But I don't know. I haven't tried it. But I want something that's, like, bigger open world where I can kind of go where I want. Like, Borderlands-esque looter shooter.
Yeah.
Customization options, and then, like, being able to do stuff. So, like, I've been on the lookout because it's kind of one of those visceral kind of, I can have fun, murder things, and get better at it.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
I feel like they're not the easiest thing to find exactly, though.
Right. I mean, BloodWest might do that for you. It's definitely not a looter shooter. There's no color-coded rarity system for things. You mostly find simple or crude weaponry, and then if you uncover certain things, you can find special like variants, like the legendary variants of different guns as you go through. Metro Exodus might even do it for you, because that is definitely more of a rapid fire shooter, but it's in open world areas that ask you to like go around and do stuff. And then you can customize your weaponry in that one too, which is fun. You get to a weapon station. Okay, what kind of barrel have I unlocked that I can use on these? What do I want to use for my loadout? So those are fun. But yeah, no, BloodWest, one of those games that passed me by in 2023, didn't get a chance to play it, got a chance to play it this year. My biggest complaint, I think, about the game, besides my little quibbles I was talking about earlier, though, is it all takes place at night. So a lot of the environments are kind of dark to traverse, especially when you get into caves and the mines and stuff like that. So kind of muddled for your palette. It's not bright at any point. Maybe adjust your gamma. You might have an easier time of it. But outside of those minor problems, still a whole hell of a lot of fun to play. Those are the 5 games that I actually wanted to talk about that didn't actually come out that year that I played. Good mix. We got a shooter, we got a card game, we've got a Spot the Anomaly, we've got a Souls-like, and we've got a crafting survival game. That's my gaming diet in a nutshell right there.
All over the place?
All over the place. Absolutely.
Sounds
100%. Right. Yeah. Recently, I was playing like a tycoon game.
Which one were you playing? I feel like I saw it, but I don't remember.
Definitely not Fried Chicken.
Oh, right. Isn't that like also kind of a horror game, maybe?
No.
I don't know. Okay.
No.
Isn't that a drug game?
Is it what?
Drugs?
Yeah. Somebody watched too much Breaking Bad, is basically what happened, and then they made this game. Not going to get too much into it, but it is both a game that you end up playing for a very long time, and also one that you will be frustrated with the entire time you're playing it. So,
right, I won't play it then.
Yeah, probably better not to. It is both addictive and unsatisfying in very much the same way the product that you're slinging in the game ends up being. So, anyway, those are 5 games that I played from last year. If you've played any of them, please let us know in the comments down below.
If you would like to know more about the show, what we do here, and Total Pub Knockdown as a whole, please go to TotalPubKnockdown.com.
That's right. You can find complete episodes of the show before they ever release over here. You can know days before what those 5 games are before anybody else. Ooh.
I think that's if they go to Patreon.
That's if they go over to the Patreon. That's right. If you want to find us, you can find us there. You can also find us on social media, whatever the hell every one of these things is called. But I'm at Titanium.
Yes, I'm at EXP Limited, and their show kind of is still at Pebble Knockdown. But currently, Big Tech is kind of just needing to be just like social media just needs to be shut down.
Can it be put into a fire? Yeah,
we'll just bring it to LA right now. Thanks.
Wow, topical. Anyway, thank you for watching Total Pebble Knockdown. And next time we knock down even more things, so that's fun. But until that point, we're going to get going. We will see you on the next one. Goodbye for now.
Or tomorrow even.
Wait, we're doing another episode tomorrow?
No, I'm just being silly.
Oh, okay, good, because I didn't have anything for tomorrow. Sorry.
Same.